What's up, AES? My name is Rachel. I work on the marketing team for IK Multimedia. We're here in Hollywood, California at the legendary Sunset Sound Studios with Drew, who runs their marketing. Everybody say hi.
Hey, AES.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for having us here. It's been amazing to walk around and check out the studio and everything.
Love IK.
Yeah, we're in Studio 2 right now, which we'll talk a little bit about more later, but... So let's get to know a little bit more about you. How did you start working with Sunset Sound, and where do you see the studio going in the next few years?
Oh, great question. I started as a musician, tracking my projects here. A good friend of mine, Nate Hayes, is an engineer here a few years ago, so kind of brought me in. And then I met the owner, Paul, who I absolutely adore, and started doing some marketing projects. We started our YouTube page. We started shooting the Sunset Sound Into the Vault, where we take artists of today and have them recreate one of these historic tracks from our vault and all these old tapes. And it just kind of built. And I'm still pinching myself, like how lucky I am to even set foot in here, let alone work. So I just became friends with the owner, and here we are.
Very nice.
I'm sorry. For the next few years, I think we're reaching into the digital age now with IK, with our YouTube, with we've got one of the greatest Instagram pages. We have all this history, and we've kind of had this not secrecy, but maybe there's a mystique that goes on here, and we're kind of letting that out of the bag now because we want to share it with everybody. We want to. We have the merchandise, we have the show, we have a lot of live streams coming out of here now with artists, tons of projects. But we want to see it just be the best studio in the world like it's been for 60 years and just keep breeding gold albums and, positive, great songwriting and, great relationships with labels, etc.
Very nice. So what do you think is the main thing that makes this the best studio in the world? Like, what is the draw that keeps artists of the past, the present, and the future dreaming about coming here and recording albums?
Well, that's a great question as well. The history. There's just no studio that has so much just epic tales and recordings and musicians. I mean, The Doors recorded 5 albums here. Pet Sounds was done here. 5 Van Halen albums in this room. Prince was here for 10 years in Studio 3. Led Zeppelin 2 and 4 done in this room. Overdubs for Exile on Main Street done in this room. One of my favorite albums ever, Smashing Pumpkins, Adore, done in this room. 4 months in '97 with producer Rick Rubin even contributing. I think people want to go where the greats go, and also just that it's independently owned. Paul's father, my owner, his father started it as a Disney house, and then it became a rock and roll house. And then back in those days, he wanted to go where the Doors recorded. It was, and that still applies today. We just have Young the Giant was just in Slipknot. Common was just tracking drums for his new album. David Crosby just left, and he's 79 years old. It's still just the greatest to me, and I think a lot of people. And I think people want greatness for their music.
Definitely. So right where we are, Studio 2, there's been a lot of greatness that's taken place here for many, many, many years. Being here, it's pretty crazy because it feels very homey, but there's also sort of like a feeling to it. If you had to describe like that magic feeling, how would you put it into words for people watching?
There's an organism that lives in here, and it's just magical. I don't know. Every time I've been in here thousands of times, and every single day, it's exciting, it's beautiful. It doesn't get much better than being in here. I think the tone in these rooms. We're in Studio 2, where if we had like an orchestra, we'd put them in there because it's our largest room. It's just so full. This room especially, I think, because it was our second room. We were so busy in Studio 1 after when the Doors sessions were going on, we had to build another room. And Van Halen, I mean, they changed rock and roll forever. So that being done in here, I think those spirits still live on. And, the producer picks the studio most of the time for a group. And our Ted Templeman, in that case for Van Halen, He loved this studio. David Foster, another legendary producer, loved this studio. Mark Ronson was a great client of ours for a long time, and even at Sound Factory, which we don't own anymore. But great producers come here because they want the tone of this room. This is an old auto repair garage in 1958, and the floors are a little slanted, and it's just designed for most beautiful melodies, and our engineers are top notch, and just everything. But again, back to the history. It's fun being in a recording studio where Eddie Van Halen did Eruption and those kind of things.
It's pretty cool to think too, if you stand in this specific place, put the mic here, you'll have the same acoustics as Jim Morrison in the vocal booth, which is exactly what we wanted to, grab and capture and put into the plugin, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But there's so many rooms here. There's three live rooms, three control rooms, 3 echo chambers. Yep. You've got spring reverb, plate reverb. You've got ISO booths. And we captured every single one of those rooms to put into the Sunset Sound Studio Reverb, making it kind of more like a reverb suite rather than a reverb plugin. You can go into all of the individual rooms here and get a different sound from each, which is really great and really cool.
It's a surprisingly amazing. I love everything personally, but with that in a studio, but that plug-in, if you're over in Asia or Europe or something, it's amazing how similar it is to this. I mean, it's you really can't even tell a difference if you if you're really studying them back and forth. But you guys sampled everything except the bathroom. I don't think.
Maybe that'll be on version 2, I guess, on the update, but we'll see. So where can people go to learn more about Sunset Sound? Grab some merch, grab the plugin.
Again, to go to your first question, how we see it in the next 5 years and what we want is, we started a great YouTube channel with that show we're doing, and it's all kind of off of sunsetsound.com. You can go there and go to our merch store. You can go there and get on our YouTube. You can go on there and read about our history, all the past artists that have been, tracked here, personnel, a lot of cool Doors stuff. But yeah, it's all off sunsetsound.com. And, follow us, subscribe, keep this great music alive. That's another thing. We want to promote great artists as well. You come to Sunset, we work with you. It's not like you just come in, your 12 hours are done, see you later. We want to follow up. We see how the album is. We have you on the show. We promote your music. We want to get into more of the digital part of business now, I guess, which we have to. And we've done fine just by having great relationships with record labels, artists, producers that are constantly here, but we want everyone to know about this studio. We want it to live on forever and do another 60 years and have great songwriters and musicians, just cater to them.
Very nice. I think it's really important as the music industry is going very far digital. Everybody's in the box, everybody's producing at home, that people can kind of take a little piece of this history through the Sunset Sound Studio Reverb plugin and use it at home and have the same sort of magic air in their tracks that Van Halen, Janis Joplin, all those people had when only a handful of people could actually come out here, book the studio time, spend time out here. And so I think it's really great that you guys are trying to extend your hand out that way.
There's people, like I said, in Europe or even in the United States that aren't going to make their way ever in life to Hollywood, but they're great musicians. They want to know what it's like to record. I mean, running the socials, I hear people every day, I just would dream of coming in there, and I direct them to the plug-in because it's not the same as being in here, but everyone that's an upper musician nowadays can run Pro Tools, and they can hear and live and see, and as my owners will tell you, it'll live on forever, and that's what we want. I think it's just so close to what it sounds like in here. It's very, very special.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. We're going to have Paul Camarata come in next, the studio owner.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. We've got Paul Camarata here, the studio owner, so we're going to ask a few questions. I know that you started this as a family-owned business with your father. When you started working at the studio, what was your goal and how has it developed and changed over time?
Well, when I first started here, I was like a little boy, young teenager, I guess you'd say. Just doing odds and ends, cleaning up and running errands and, getting coffee for the, engineers and things like that. So back then, that doesn't really count. So I didn't probably come to work here full time till I was in my mid-20s, maybe early 20s. I have to think about that. Somewhere around then. So back then, the studio was really, really busy. We had 2 rooms going, and we were about to build a 3rd room. And so what were my goals? Mm-hmm. So I guess I'd been impressed from my father on certain things, aspects that Sunset Sound has built its foundation on. One is that we put a high emphasis on equipment, and mostly it was vintage, or, well, back then it wasn't so vintage because a lot of it was new, but it's vintage now. But we always did in-house modification to a lot of equipment, and also we built a lot of our own consoles. And back then, in the mid-70s, when I basically started working here full-time, we had 3 API-based consoles that were custom-built that were pretty much very similar between all 3 rooms. So the philosophy was always the equipment, always having great maintenance so that we didn't have downtime. That was always, because my father was a musician, so it was always about, the worst thing you could have is sessions going down and not flowing like they should, and having an issue with equipment problems. So I try to carry on that philosophy with the studios.
Very nice. Do you think your goal has changed now and into the future?
Well, we're still, a vintage house. I mean, we have this vintage Neve here, and the other 2 rooms are still API-based. But going forward, it's the same philosophy of we put a big emphasis on maintenance. But, we are a digital-based studio in terms of recording now, which everybody is. There's just not much tape going on anymore. But we do have a tremendous array of vintage outboard gear and microphones, and probably one of the best collections around because we've been in here so long.
Very cool. So with keeping it vintage, what would you say is the number one thing that's changed about the studio, and what would you say is the number one thing that's stayed the same throughout the years?
Okay, the number one thing that's changed is recording technology. Recording technology now has progressed to the point that people can record on laptops, and they can record anywhere. They can record in their home, their living room, in a garage, wherever, where they couldn't before. You had to come into a studio because you had a lot of aspects. You had tape machines you had to have technical assistance, all these things. That with technology being digital now, you can basically do it anywhere. So that's changed a lot. What hasn't changed is that we have 3 live tracking rooms here, and they all have a different flavor. They all sound a little different. And people come in as contained bands and want to get a sound from depending which studio they're in, but they want to get a sound that they can't really get at home in the living room. So we do a lot of tracking in here. We do a lot of drum tracking because the rooms sound great. And I guess that's what hasn't changed. We certainly don't do the start to finish projects like we did at one time because of technology and because of budgets. So there's a difference there.
Very nice. So I know that you were here when our IK developers came in and took all the impulses in the rooms and everything. Mm-hmm. What was it like working with developers to try to replicate that same feel in the digital world so people can have that sunset sound at home?
Well, the guys came over from Italy. It was a whole crew that came over to digitally map the studios through this. I think it's a process that only IK has.
It's
their
called
algorithm.
It's impulse responses. So basically, we'll play a sound and we capture the acoustics around the sound rather than the sound itself. So all of the effects that one sound is making because of the room and all the external factors.
Yeah. So when they were doing it, it was, well, it was a little foreign to me and the rest of my techs here, but we figured they knew what they were doing. So they came in and mapped all the studios, including the echo chambers and the vocal booths, and took it back to Italy and created the program. So I really didn't know what was going to occur until we got the finalized program. But when we did, and then we brought a lot of past engineers in that knew these rooms really well to work with IK to, one, listen to what they had done and also to do some presets for them. But they came to me and were just raving to me about how well this program from IK emulated the studio, and in such detail, and from the echo chambers especially to the room sound. And so it's a phenomenal program that really has captured Sunset Sound.
Very cool. So we're in Studio 2 right now, which is one of, in my opinion, the coolest rooms to be in. What would you say is your your favorite memory from here?
Well, there's been quite a bit, but I remember coming down here. I was a big Led Zeppelin fan, so I remember I came down here. I think I was in high school, and Zeppelin was recording in here, and I wanted to see them so bad. But I remember the first thing I saw on the door was closed session, do not enter. There was just no way to get in on the session. They were not allowing anyone unless you'd been invited. So that was kind of a bummer, but at least I knew they were here.
Did you at least get to listen through the door or something?
No, I'm afraid not. But anyway, so that's one memory. Another memory I have is when we were working on Toto 4, and I knew the Toto guys. And this was a really elaborate session at that time. It was like 1983, I think. And I remember they had 3 multi-tracks lined up here, which is unheard of, 3 24 tracks. And we were syncing them or locking them together because they had so many tracks. And they were like doing Africa. And Al Schmidt was the engineer, and we were just maxed out. I mean, the board was maxed out, the equipment. Having all these tape machines and syncing them was quite a feat back then. But that record turned out phenomenally, and I think they won Record of the Year, actually, when it did come out.
Very cool. So it was worth it?
Yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it for them, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that with Drew we talked a lot about, keeping the legacy of Sunset Sound living on through things like merch, the plugin, YouTube, and all that good stuff. What was your main reasoning for wanting to work with IK to make the plugin?
Well, it didn't start with IK, but I had been approached from a friend of mine that we should do a modeling of the rooms to one for marketing purposes, but another was for the longevity of the studio so that it would never be lost. And so I had talked to him, and he had suggested a few people that I should maybe talk to, which I did, but for multiple reasons, it didn't work out with them. So another one of my clients suggested, which is Ross Hogarth, suggested I talk to IK Media because they had an emulation program that he felt was very good, and they would work with me to recreate Sunset Sound basically on this program. So I got together with them, and ultimately that's who I did it with, and which I'm very satisfied with. I think the people that use it are too. And we've created basically Sunset Sound in longevity for forever because of this. Long one, Sunset Sound is dead and buried. Yeah, we will still have it through IK Media, which is very satisfying to me.
Yeah, especially as the owner, that's one of the best things you could ask for is just to have your legacy live on. So that's very great. So what are the main elements of the studio that you wanted to shine in the plugin? What did you want to bring to it?
Well, first and foremost, I wanted to get each room modeled to as closely as we could on the program, that it would, emulate the sound of the three specific different rooms we have here, because they are three quite different sounding rooms. And I was a little leery that we could do that, but lo and behold, we did do that. The other thing that I really was interested in doing was getting the 3 live echo chambers that we have here modeled and sounding like they are. And these echo chambers they're legendary. They're on records for 6 decades, at least Studio One chamber is. And to get those and to get them to sound right was a big thing with me, and they did.
Very nice. If I'm correct, these are some of the only echo chambers, like live echo chambers, that are still in function today? I'll have to say probably not, but there's not a lot of echo chambers around anymore. There was a time where the recording studio that was the only echo you could have. There was 2 types of echo. It was you had an echo chamber, or you had a tape machine, and you did slap, where they had the delay between them, the playback and record head or whatever. And that was the only way to get echo. There was no devices that like digital devices that created echo. So we were fortunate enough to, one of our previous managers here back in the 60s, he came from Capitol Records, and the Capitol Studios had some very famous chambers, and he helped us build 2 of our 3 chambers, and that's one of the reasons they sound great. But what's left with studios having chambers, in town that I'm aware of, it's us and Capitol. I don't think anyone else has any chambers anymore. Yeah, I don't think so either.
No.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
And very cool that you can use it from all over the world now. So, and then I just have one last question. You talked about Ross Hogarth and all of the engineers that you worked with and have been working with over the years. And they developed some presets for Sunset Sound Studio Reverb. What are their thoughts on the plugin, and what are their, how have they talked to you about using it?
Well, we had a pretty good cross section of engineers, both current and old school, that IK dealt with and talked to about the program. And I know that they released the initial, prototypes, you'd call them, to these guys to analyze them and get some feedback. And the first guy was Bruce Botnick. So Bruce Botnick was our house engineer in the 60s, and he's a legendary engineer, known for doing so many projects over the years, but what he did here was all the Doors records. So, he's known for that, but he's known for so many other things too. But I always knew that if Bruce would put his stamp of approval on it, that, especially for the echo chambers, that we knew we had it done right, and he did. So from the old school, Bruce gave it a thumbs up. Then from the newer school, which was Ross Hogarth, and he knows these rooms, and he felt the rooms were just dead on with the program. And then kind of in the middle would be Mark Lynette. Mark Lynette worked for me, I think 70s through early 80s, and he's a pretty accomplished engineer. He does all the Beach Boys work, works with Brian Wilson. And he knew the rooms very well because he was a staff engineer here. He was an assistant and became an engineer. And he said that, again, that the program really copied the rooms and the echo chambers very well. And these guys are all happy to have this because they're like, God, I can have Sunset Sound on the road now in my laptop. So if I need the echo chamber or I need the live room, there it is.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Yeah.
For instant recall. Stuff
oh
like that.
yeah, and it worked out
Very
just
nice.
better than I expected, actually.
Good. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. We will have links to both Sunset Sound and the Studio Reverb in the description, and we're going to be giving 15% off to all AES viewers for today. So thank you so much, and tune in with us tomorrow.
And thank you to IK Media.
Thank you for having me here.
Okay.
See ya.
Thanks.